couple of reminders before I bring Donna up. Utah Valley Oasis does rely on volunteers, and if you'd like to get involved, we have a couple sign-up sheets, and so we'll be passing those around. Also, if you want us to continue to have marginally good coffee and good speakers and good music and everything, please donate. I'll be passing a basket around as well. Without further ado, Donna Kelly has been a champion for more than 3,000 victims as a prosecutor of sexual assault, domestic violence, and child abuse cases for more than 26 years. In Utah, she prosecuted for the Utah County Attorney's Office for 9 years, and for the last 4 years, she has been the Utah Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Resource Prosecutor, at the Attorney's General Office, doing training for police, prosecutors, and other criminal justice professionals. She has also been a tireless advocate for positive changes in the criminal justice system and created a trauma-informed victim interview protocol for interviewing people who have been through trauma. In her spare time, she is active in feminist organizations, writes cookbooks, and is a grandma to 4 darling grandchildren. Please bring up Donna Kelly.
So thank you so much for having me, Lance. I really am excited to be here and so excited to see that there's so many people that are willing to come and listen to somebody talk about sexual assault on a Sunday morning. You guys are awesome. Thank you for caring about it. Thank you. I've taught, for the last 4 years, I've probably trained between 8,000 and 10,000 people, not only in Utah, but around the nation. So I teach in all different types of settings. Probably the biggest setting was I spoke at the National Conference in Dallas, Texas this last year to an audience of about 750 people. But I've also taught, I sat at a table and taught, 6 or 7 police officers too. So I do a wide variety, and this school is just great. What a great setting for learning. I want to go to a school someday that has a Irish hip-hop dance club. Seriously, there's a flyer on the back bulletin board that says Irish hip-hop dance club. I mean, seriously, that's so amazing. So anyway, this is a small enough group that, please feel free to comment or ask questions about sexual assault. I don't want to just stand up here and talk. I want to stand up here and talk about things that you want to hear about. So please interrupt me at any time. Obviously, I've been working full-time in the field of sexual assault and domestic violence for the last 26 years. So I told Lance this morning when he was saying, okay, now how much time do you need? I said, look, I can talk for 2 minutes or 2 days about this, so you just let me know. So anyway, I'm here to share with you. I want to talk a little bit about sexual assault myths because I think that we all have them sort of floating around in our brain. And they are very damaging to victims and to our society because they are very pervasive. I mean, I have done many jury trials over the years and one of the really most scary things I do is go back and talk to the jury after the verdict is in and hear what they say. And sometimes it literally is just kind of shocking and scary about all the things that they have in their mind as myths about sexual assault. Because of sexual assault, victims didn't behave the way that they think they would have behaved when they were sexually assaulted. So the more we talk about these myths and get them out in the open, the better our society is going to be. I believe that we're currently in the middle of a revolution on our attitudes and a huge culture change on our attitudes and approach to sexual assault and domestic violence. When I was a prosecutor, now I started in the early 1990s. So it's been more than 25 years now. When I was started as a prosecutor, I started work on a Monday morning. On Tuesday morning, I had a jury trial. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I went into the courtroom, and luckily the judge there was really awesome and nice. And kind of helped me through it. But it was a DUI case. The only DUI case I've ever handled in 26 years. And I handled this case. And at that time, juries and society in general thought it was a big joke. They came into the jury box laughing, they laughed. They thought it was a big joke. People don't feel that way anymore about DUI. Because they realize people get killed and injured and maimed, and it destroys people's lives. That's the same thing that's happening right now with domestic violence and sexual assault. We're undergoing a culture change in how we feel about it. That, there was a time when, 25 years ago in this country, most people, if you interviewed the average person on the street, they would say most people lie about sexual assault. They just make it up. I don't think that's necessarily true anymore, and I think that we're making huge progress. The trainings that I do with police officers is really interesting because I teach them about trauma and how it affects your behavior and your memory. And we do a pre-training survey and a post-training survey. And if I'm lucky enough to get 4 hours with these officers, I can go through all the signs of trauma and how much you paid and how much you remember things. And then you see, as the day goes on, you see all these light bulbs going on around the room. You see them go, oh my gosh, I didn't know all of that stuff. And then we do a post-training survey at the end of the training, and it makes a difference. If we talk about things and educate ourselves about these topics, it makes a huge difference in our society. And I believe that's happening right now. We have a long way to go, and Utah is one of the highest states for domestic violence and sexual assault. Did you know that? Yes.
My question is, do you think that's actually true, or is it because we're actually good at prosecuting or not? Is it maybe just the opposite? When I hear statistics like that, I wonder if that's just because we have a good attitude, like people like you in our system, recognizing prosecuting.
No, I don't. I think that's something that we have to think about and consider. Like, when I see, like, crime rate is up, a newspaper headline that says crime rate is up, I'm like, okay, does that mean crime rate is really up, or does that mean more people are reporting?
Right.
And we're doing a better job of handling it, right? But the thing about the surveys that have been done in Utah, not only is our rates very high for the reported crime, they're also very high for the, Dan Jones and Associates did a study a couple years ago where they called a huge population of women randomly. And it was about 6,000 people were surveyed. The rates were also high for people who had never reported. So that's not explicable by just doing a better job of prosecuting these cases. Because the rates are high also for women who don't report. So we do have a problem in Utah. We're one of the almost always we're in the top 10 states for domestic violence and sexual assault. So, but the good news is, look at you. You're all here. You care about these issues. I mean, the good news is good things are happening. And my work with lots of different organizations in Utah has been so encouraging the last few years because when we work together, things get better. The trauma-informed victim interviewing protocol that we introduced in West Valley City, the prosecution rate for sexual assault cases was 6% at the time we introduced it. So every woman that came in and reported sexual assault, for every 100 women that had the courage to go get an exam, go report sexual assault, 6 of those cases were prosecuted. That's not convicted, that's filed, prosecuted. 6 out of 100. So we did training and work with the, just to see if we could make a difference, to move that needle a little bit with West Valley City, and West Valley City Police Department is one of the worst in the state. I think their rate was 4%. They now, after a year of implementing this new study, this new interviewing protocol, their prosecution rate is 24%. So that's not ideal, but it's getting better. And we're re-upping the study. We're going to re-up it in February to try to move that number higher.
So I could see a response to that being that, well, if there's only that many actually being prosecuted, then the vast majority of them are false claims. Like, have you heard that type of response before?
Yeah. And there have been studies on that also,
Okay.
as to why it is that officers don't close cases early, and why it is that prosecutors don't file cases. Basically, the number of false reports, I'm going to get to that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'll talk about that when I
Sorry.
get to it. I got this PowerPoint, I got to use it. Okay, so I want to kind of go through these. This will be a little bit quick because this is designed for a 90-minute presentation. So I might go a little bit faster. I might skip some stuff as we go along. First of all, why do these rape myths exist in our society? And I don't believe that it's all bad motives on our part. I don't believe anybody, including police officers, get up in the morning and say, I'm going to do a really bad job today. I want to hurt some victims today. I don't believe anybody says that. I don't believe the officers believe that or say that. But they don't know what they don't know. And so they just go out there. And the things that influence us to believe rape myths are sometimes well-intentioned. In other words, we want to believe that our society is safe. Do we really want to believe that sexual assault happens in our neighborhood? In the schools that we send our daughters to? Do we really want to believe that? Or would it be better to say, oh, no. We don't have rape in Utah. We don't have sexual assault here. That's a defense mechanism on our part, psychologically more comforting, or we feel so much better if we could just explain it away. If somebody came to you and said, I don't know what to do, I was raped last night. You don't want to believe that that really happened to that person that you care about. You don't want to believe that it happens in your neighborhood, at your daughter's school. So you say, well, let's sit and talk about this. Now maybe it was just a misunderstanding. I'm sure he's a good guy. I'm sure he didn't mean to do that. It's a good intention on your part, is what I'm saying. You want to explain it away so that you feel safer. And it doesn't happen here.
Do you feel like some of it has a root in like gender dynamics too? Who's in power?
Like maybe thousands of years of male domination of females? I don't know. Do you think Yeah.
So we're like trying to work
That whatever man wants is what should happen whether the woman wants it or not. I don't know. There's also some religious organizations that believe that. I don't know if you've heard of any of those. The other thing is, human beings want to believe in justice. At our heart, we want to believe that this world is a just place. We want to believe that people who are just walking down the street and being good people and good citizens, bad things don't happen. Because this is a just world. We don't want to believe. To believe that sexual assault happens, we have to believe that our world is not always safe. And our world is not always just. And that's a scary thing. So anyway, I wanted to start out saying that, but I don't think it's bad motives on our part all the time. I think that it's a defense mechanism. And you know what? We need to get over that in order to deal with the problem better. So, the stereotype of a rape is this guy. There's a degenerate, sex-starved, knife-wielding stranger who leaps out of the shadows to attack an unsuspecting young woman who resists vigorously, is seriously injured, and immediately reports to the police. This is what we think a real rape is. This is what we want to believe. Because there's not a lot of these guys walking around Provo, Utah. Right? So that makes us feel safer. Wow, it's just watch out for this one guy in a million, right? And beliefs in myths in our society are widely held. All types of people believe and promote rape myths. Whoopi Goldberg a couple of years ago, and when Roman Polanski was trying to come back to our country, you remember Roman Polanski was the guy who drugged and then had sexual intercourse with a 13-year-old girl and pled guilty to rape, and then fled the country. He was trying to come back to the country, get his warrants dropped, so he could come back to the United States. And a lot of celebrities came to his defense. And they said things like this: well, it wasn't real rape, you know, because he didn't have a knife or a gun. You know, it was just, you know, a 13-year-old girl that was, you know, promiscuous or whatever. Right? So everybody in our society has some of these kind of myths in their mind. Really? So drugging a 13-year-old girl and having sex with her is not really rape. Really? This guy was a congressman a couple of summers ago. You may remember this statement: pregnancy from rape is really rare if it's a legitimate rape. See that term, legitimate rape? There's just a small number of those real rapes that happen. The female body has tried ways to shut that whole thing down. You can't get pregnant from a real rape. I mean, these myths exist all over the place. Here's probably the biggest one: he said, she said. And I'm here to tell you, after 26 years of being a prosecutor of these cases, this is rarely true. It does happen extreme. I could count on, out of the 3,000 cases I've probably handled as a prosecutor, I could count on one hand the cases where this is true. The thing is, if we look for evidence, we always find it. One way or the other, either it happened or it didn't happen. But it usually means we just don't want to deal with it. We want to believe rape doesn't happen. So we treat sexual assault cases differently than any other kind of case in our system. We start out with not wanting to believe the victim when they tell us that they were raped. I mean, can you imagine if we treated all victims the same way that we treated sexual assault victims? Like a bank robbery. If we treated a teller at a bank the same way that we treated the sexual assault victims, we would say this: now, come on, you had all these piles of money somewhere. You must have wanted to be robbed. To a burglar victim, you would say to a burglar victim, you left your window open? Really? Because what is your burglar victim? You wanted to be burglars, isn't that? I mean, our disbelief of sexual assault cases causes us to treat them very differently. So, this is is anybody here from the law enforcement? Okay. It's meant to be humorous, just in case. I mean, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, that I'm just up here bashing on law enforcement. But somebody out there in the world did this clever video and put it on the World Wide Web. And it's, what if we treated a robbery case the same way that we treat sexual assault? What would that look like in our society? So it's just a couple minutes and I really love it. Sure. Okay, wait, we have no sound. Lance, do you know why we have no sound? It said I had sound. Huh?
They seem pretty upbeat for somebody who just had their computer stolen.
I've just never been robbed before. I'm just trying to be polite.
I'm sure it wasn't an unfortunate yard sale.
Yeah, it was a brand new iMac with Retina display.
Ooh, sounds pretty sexy. You flaunting it?
No, it was right over there on the bureau.
Right here in front of this window. Flashing your goods for all the world to see? Kind of sounds like you were asking for it.
I should be able to put my computer wherever I want.
I found a report you're going to bring a lot of negative attention to this neighborhood and to yourself.
I don't care. It's not my fault that this happened. The perpetrator should be the one getting the negative attention.
Whoa, are you yelling at us? Because that is exactly the kind of bad behavior that we can use against you in your report.
No, I'm sorry, man. Please investigate.
Sure. Let's take a look around. No signs of forced entry.
No?
Locks intact.
Yep.
No broken windows. Do you have any physical evidence that you were robbed?
Yes. and now I don't have a computer.
Oh, let's not get cute, okay? How do I know that you didn't want someone to take it with you?
Because I'm saying I didn't.
Had you been drinking?
I had a Bloody Mary at brunch, but I don't see why that matters.
Wow. Because if you were drinking, the courts are probably gonna side with the robber.
It doesn't make any sense. Even if I was blackout drunk, I still have the right to a safe home.
I think we're done here.
Wait, what?
Well, we need physical evidence in order to prove that you were robbed, and so far, we don't have any.
What about asking for fingerprints?
We could ask for fingerprints.
Great, yeah, let's do that.
Well, there is a backlog of 400,000 fingerprint kits that have yet to be processed, so it's gonna be a while.
This is ridiculous.
And even if we did find the perp at this point, it would be a real, he said.
Yeah, so you ready to drop this thing?
No, absolutely not. Someone was in here without my consent and they took something that I'll never get back. I feel violated. And by not doing something about it, you're letting them go free so we can do it to other people.
We can tell you're upset. So we're gonna file a report, don't worry. If I was you, I'd maybe get an alarm system, some security cameras, keep your blinds closed, hide all your valuables.
Buy yourself a gun, take some self-defense classes, make sure you get a big dog, make sure the house is never alone.
This whole system is set up against the victim.
Hey, robbers will be robbers.
Robbers will be robbers. Yeah. So that's what it looks like. That's what not believing people, victims, looks like. And that's how it translates into it. That's why we're getting 6% prosecution rates in Utah. So what are some of the, I'm going to go quickly through some of these myths. And the first one is about perpetrators. We want to believe, because of this whole safety thing, we want to feel safe. We want to believe that sex offenders fit into a certain profile and they're easy to identify. You know, we want to believe that there's, you know, the word rapist tattooed on their forehead, so we'll know to avoid those people, right? But the truth is that there is no identifiable profile. We do know some things, though. Reported sexual offenses, the ones that come into our system, are committed 95% by men. Sexist. It is horribly sexist and horribly true. 75 to 90% of sexual assaults are committed by someone the victim knows. So the studies vary from 75 to 90, but if you're going to be sexually assaulted, it's usually by somebody you know. We like to say these things like, well, you know, rape is not a sex motivated by sex, it's motivated by power and dominance and all of that. But the truth is, most of the research says it's a mix of things for sex offenders. Obviously, it has something to do with sex, but something to do with power and control as well. So it's a mix of various motives. There is no profile, but there are certain risk factors that we have learned over the years. In one study, one particularly huge study that looked at 28,000 offenders, these were the risk factors that were associated with sexual assault. Looking at perpetrators only. Okay? Antisocial personality orientation, not necessarily a diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder, but having those tendencies was the biggest. In other words, if you're a person who doesn't care about what other people want, doesn't care about their rights or their interests or what they want to happen, you only care about yourself. And you're willing to go to extreme measures to get that, to make that happen. You don't care about what the laws are, you don't care about what other people want or how it affects them. You care only about yourself. And you're aggressive in making that happen. Those kind of folks are much more likely to be, sex offenders are much more likely to have antisocial personality issues. They have deviant sexual arousal issues. They have significant social influences that they gravitate towards those kind of circles. They have intimacy deficits. And I'm not talking sexual deficits, I'm talking intimacy. They have an inability to form healthy, intimate relationships with other people. So because they don't have that, they're more likely to offend. This is not the number one thing, but they have had adverse childhood experiences. They have very high adverse ACE scores, adverse childhood experience scores. So that doesn't necessarily mean sexual abuse, but if you've had really damaging things happen to you as a child. Other psychological problems and offense-supportive attitudes, where, you know, hey, they were asking for it, and attitude being brought. So, no profile of a sex offender, but we do see certain risk factors. Sexual assault myth number 2 is that a weapon is used or serious physical injury is caused. This almost never, I can tell you this for certain. It's very rare to have extreme injury caused during sexual assault. For a lot of reasons, I think the number one reason is the thing that I'll get to later, tonic immobility, where you're immobile. When this is happening to you and you're in trauma, you're immobile, so your body doesn't fight back. It's not a choice, it's how your body responds to trauma. Physical and verbal immobility are very common. So the facts are, weapons are rarely used. 70% of rape victims have no physical injury at all on their body. And 24% have some very minor physical injury if it's non-specific to rape. So 94% of sexual assault victims have very little or no injury to their body, physical injury. Rape victims don't often immediately report to the police. Only a small percentage, less than 10% of sexual assault is ever reported to the police, but when it is reported, it's usually, most of the time, reported days or weeks later. Sexual assault myth number 4. Sexual assault is an impulsive act. The fact is that the studies of convicted sex offenders show that 70 to 80% of sexual assaults are planned in advance. These, especially for serial offenders, these are events, the research shows that their most favorite part of their perpetrating is the fantasy ahead of time. They love to think about what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, how they're going to get away with it. The fantasizing is the part that they talk most with researchers about. So most sexual assaults are planned in advance. And if you think about it, that kind of makes sense, because for those sexual offenders that are serial offenders, they're the predators in our society. They're the ones that, like the predators in the jungle. You know, think about the lion in the jungle. Lions spend a lot of time just sitting and waiting. They just watch for the herds to go by. And they might watch 27 herds before they see that one antelope that is a good target and go after that target. So they're sitting there watching, thinking through, planning what they're going to do. Sexual assault is usually not an impulsive act where, oh, hey, we were just at a party, things went a little too far, and we were meant for this to happen. That's not what sexual assault is about. It's about the mindset of wanting to perpetrate. I don't know how many of you have ever seen, we just think it's just, oh, they got a little too carried away at a fraternity party. No, they didn't. They planned it. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Dr. David Lisak. Has anybody heard of him? He did a study of university. He's one of the researchers that was the impetus behind a lot of the current changes for sexual assault on campus being investigated better, dealt with better, and his numbers were 20% of college-age students, 20% of females will be sexually assaulted in the 4 years of their college. So he did hundreds of interviews with college-age men, and what he found was if you never used the word rape or assault, they would openly talk about it. perpetrating on women. In other words, if he used language like, have you ever done something that the other person didn't really want? Oh yeah, I've done that. And they would openly talk about it. As long as the word rape or sexual assault wasn't ever used, then they could explain it away in their mind. This is just about 3 minutes. Am I running out of time, Lance?
You're good.
Okay. This is about 3 minutes of one of Dr. Lisak's interviews. And I want to show this to you because it clearly shows this myth of, oh, it was just things went a little too far to get enough of this. This is not the actual person who said it. They did transcripts of this, so this is a recreation of that interview. But these are the actual words that the guy used.
We had parties every weekend. That's what my fraternity was known for. And we'd invite a bunch of girls, lay out a bunch of kegs or whatever we were drinking that night, and everyone would just get blasted. And we'd all invite girls, all of us in the fraternity. You know, we'd be on the lookout for the good-looking girls, especially the freshmen, the really young ones. They were the easiest. It's like they didn't know the ropes, kind of, you know, like they were easy prey. And they wouldn't know anything about drinking or how much alcohol they could handle. So, you know, they wouldn't know anything about our techniques.
What were those techniques?
Well, we invited them to the party, you know, and made it seem like it was a real honor. Like we didn't just invite any girl, which I guess in a way is true. You know, and then we'd get them drinking right away. We'd have all those kegs, but we always had some kind of punch also, you know, like our own home brew. And we'd make it with a real sweet juice and we'd pour in all kinds of alcohol. And it was really powerful stuff. The girls wouldn't know what hit them. They'd be guzzling it, you know, because they were freshmen, kind of nervous, and it was just juice anyhow, right? So.
When you say it was just juice, you mean girls wouldn't know that it was spiked with alcohol?
Well, they knew. I mean, they knew that. At least the smart ones did. But it was a party, right? That's some kind of, you know, like social tea. I think they must have known, or most of them did anyway. The ones that didn't have it were really naive.
Well, did you count on them being naive?
Yeah, the really young ones, the naive ones were the easiest. And they'd be the ones that we'd target.
What do you mean by target?
Well, that's what we'd call them. You know, we'd all be scouting for targets during the week. You know, we'd pick them out, work them over during the week, and then get them all psyched up to come to one of our famous parties. They'd be the ones that really worked on.
What would happen once they were drunk at the party?
Well, that's when one of us would make our move. You know, by then each one of the girls had been kind of staked out by one of us, meaning one of the guys would be working on them, getting them drinks, you know, keeping the juices flowing, so to speak. And you kind of had to know your moment, you know, when to make the move. You basically had to have instinct for it.
Can you describe what happened in the specific occasion you referred to in your questionnaire?
Yeah, sure. I had this girl staked out. I picked her up in one of my classes, you know, worked on her. She was all prepped. I was watching for her. You know, the minute she walked into the door of the party, I was on her. And she's really good looking, too. You know, we started drinking together, and I could tell she was nervous. I could tell she was nervous because, you know, she was drinking that stuff so fast.
What was she drinking?
Well, it was some kind of punch we made, you know, the usual thing.
Did she know it was spiked with alcohol?
I don't really know, although she must have after a while, you know, because she started to get plastic in just a few minutes. And, you know, so I started making my moves on her. I kind of leaned in close, you know, got my arm around her, and then at the right moment I kissed her, you know, moved in a little closer. You know, like the usual kind of stuff. I'm sure it was no surprise to her. She'd done it 1,000 times before, you know, and after a while, I asked her if she wanted to go to my room, you know, get away from the noise. And she came right away, so actually it wasn't my room. You know, we always had several rooms designated for the party, you know, that were all prepped for this.
Designated rooms?
Yeah, we set aside a few rooms, you know, bring the girls up to once they were ready.
What happened when you got to the designated room?
Well, she was really woozy by this time, so I brought up another drink, you know, and sat her down on one of the beds, sat down next to her, and pretty soon I just made my move. I don't remember exactly what I did first. I probably, you know, leaned her down on the bed, started working on her clothes, feeling her up.
How did she respond?
I don't remember. I started working her blouse off, you know. I think she might have said something. I don't remember. I didn't expect her to get into it right away.
Did she say anything?
Yeah, at some point she started saying things like, you know, I don't want to do this right away or something like that. I just kept looking on her clothes, you know, and she started squirming. But that actually helped because her blouse came off easier. And I kind of leaned on her, you know, kept feeling her up, get her more into it. She tried to push me off, so I pushed her back down.
Were you angry?
No, but, you know, pissed me off. She played along the whole way and then decided to squirm out of it like that at the end. I mean, she was so flashy, she probably didn't know what was going on anyway. I don't know. Maybe that's why she started pushing on me, but, you know, I just kept leaning on her, pulling off her clothes. And at some point she stopped squirming. I don't know. When she passed out, tried to
What happened?
I fought her.
Did you have to lean on her and hold her down when you did?
Yeah, I had my arm across her chest like this, you know. That's how I did it.
Was she squirming?
Yeah, she was squirming, but not so much anymore.
What happened afterwards?
I got dressed and went back to the party.
What did she do?
She left.
You know, there are many things that
That's kind of chilling as you listen to him talk about these are not people, these are targets. They, you know, offenders will often dehumanize their victims so that it's easier to offend and not feel bad about it. But his whole thing was, yeah, she, you know, how dare she, you know, back down on this. What I
She
wanted
should
to
have known. She should have known what she was.
Yeah, and, you know, she said, yeah, I don't want to do this right now, but I just ignored it. So this kind of scenario shows us that many sexual assaults are planned out many things. Yeah.
that person convicted?
No, this guy was never. All of these people that David Lisak interviewed were never convicted, never even reported. Most of them were never even reported for sexual assault. And the way he got them to talk to them was, talk to me about sexual things that you've done that, you know, the other person didn't really want. So it wasn't worded in terms of rape. Anyway, so, okay. This is kind of the
We have a
hard,
question.
depressing part of the presentation. Yeah.
Quick question.
Okay, so that same, I was going to say gentleman, but I don't want, that man, okay, when he goes like out of college, out of the frat environment, now he's working, does he maintain that kind of persona where he thinks it's okay to get girls drunk and what's that? Or do they eventually kind of quote normalize, you know, and suddenly deciding and have a, you know, so how much was the environment and how much was him? Not that I'm trying to excuse him, I'm trying to understand though, does that continue on?
This is the problem that we don't know a lot about sex offender perpetration, you know, longevity and things, because first of all, many sexual assaults are never reported. Second of all, they're not always willing to be real honest with us about it. But I would say he's at risk for continuing to be a perpetrator. Because look at the antisocial features of what he just said.
Yeah, and he got away with it.
What I want is the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter what she wants. I don't care. You know, I'm going to prep her for that, and I'm going to get what I want. That's antisocial. So I would say he's at risk for being a lifetime sex offender.
I was just thinking about how systemic this was and wondering, because sociopaths often become the lawmakers, and then the fraternities in Yale and all those places
Might even run for president.
Like, yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, it just feels so huge and systemically impossible, and women have to run for all. Like, we have to, like.
Utah has one of the worst in the. I think there's one state that's worse for leadership for women. One state. I think it's like Alabama or somewhere. We are, you know, 12% of our legislators are female. Really? We've never had an elected governor of the state of Utah as a female. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Because these issues are not going to be brought forward unless women care and do something.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that 20% of college females experienced assault. Well, what are the numbers for the men that are perpetrating? Is it?
We know that there are male victims of sexual assault as well.
No, I meant like how many men are like assaulting women?
Percentage-wise?
Yes.
Yeah, who are the perpetrators?
Like, is it a small percent or like a larger percent?
Most men are really good people. A small percentage of men are committing a large percentage. Most sexual offenders are serial offenders. In fact, there's one study where they went and interviewed convicted offenders in prison. where they admitted to like at least 75 victims each. So, yeah, no, most men are really good people. It's just these narrow cuts.
The question was, what happens after, we know that rape doesn't stop once people graduate from college. So this guy was a law student. Presumably he became a lawyer, maybe a judge. And, maybe he becomes the boss who sexually intimidates the underlings. Who knows? Or maybe he just, a bully. Maybe he grew up.
I would say he's at risk. He's somebody I would really want to watch. Yeah.
The problem overall is that they don't know where the problem is. So I had a work experience, and I had a sales gal who was selling to a big client, and I worked with her and we were there. And I had this guy, this young kid, who I thought was the customer, ended up being one of our sales guys, and doing what salespeople do to sell. And later on, we sat down and had a regroup and said, well, how did it go? And he said, you know what you need to do? He's saying it to the sales guy. You need to take him out, take him to a bar, get through about 20 drinks or whatever, and just work him over, and just really build a good friendship and everything, and then you'll be able to start selling, And I was shocked. Like, what the hell are you talking about? It's culturally, if you don't even recognize that, say this is a gal, right? Hey, how you doing? And you don't recognize this as inappropriate at all, there is no problem. So culturally, to that guy, he never thought he was doing anything wrong. And so when people say, do they know, are they going to continue? If you don't recognize that there's a problem, then there's no discussion. And that's the biggest problem of that, because even a boyfriend, girlfriend that attacked her, of course, and everything, ends up where it goes too far, that's rape. But you don't culturally recognize, well, no, it's a challenge.
So that's why it's so important for things like you people being here. Thank you for being here. Very valuable. That's how we change it. Okay, a couple more myths, and then we'll get to some things to do. One big one is that women incite men to rape by their behavior, by what they're wearing, that sort of thing. The fact is that opportunity is the greatest single precipitator of sexual assault. If there's an opportunity, predators will take it. Most sex offenders, when they're interviewed, cannot even describe what their victim was wearing. Doesn't matter. The first rape case I had when I was started as a prosecutor in Oregon was an 87-year-old woman who was raped in her own bed in the morning. She woke up and there was a man standing over her. It wasn't what she was wearing. It wasn't what she was doing. Okay. Perpetrators can't even really describe to you what the victim was wearing. So, I'm going to have to start skipping here, I know, because I'm talking too much. Sexual assault location. Most people think that rape is only a problem that happens in inner city, kind of downtown ghetto kind of places. If I didn't know much about sexual assault, I would assume like downtown New Jersey, bad neighborhoods. That's where rape and sexual assault happens. But actually the opposite is true. Rates are much higher in rural areas. Utah ranks number 14 last year out of the 50 states, and we're considered a fairly rural state. The highest state in the United States for sexual assault, what would you guess it would be?
Mississippi.
California? What? Mississippi or somewhere? Somewhere in the south? Yeah, let's just say Alaska. Alaska. You give that man a prize. Alaska has the highest sexual assault rates in the country. Partly because of how rural they are, partly because Native women are high victimization rates. So look at this, Alaska, a lot of these states that are high are very rural states. Alaska, South Dakota, of all places, New Mexico. Look at New York and New Jersey. Oh my gosh, I would have put them at the very top. They think, the experts think it's because women are more isolated, have less access to help, you know, are easy targets because they're so isolated. So we don't know about all the reasons why, but rural areas are very high for sexual assault. This is a possum, playing possum. You've heard that phrase before. There's a myth that exists, and I've heard it from jurors before. Well, if this guy tried to rape me, I would kick him, I would bite him, I would scratch him, I would scream. So most people have this myth in their mind that sexual assault victims, if they don't scream loud enough, or if they don't kick or fight hard enough, then they must not have really been raped. But that's absolutely not true. In fact, trauma has a powerful effect on your behavior and your abilities. Most trauma victims experience one of two things while they're in trauma. Disassociation, which means your brain tries to remove you from the experience and like it's not really happening. Or tonic immobility, which is your inability to move. So when I, in the past, used to ask victims things like, okay, so why didn't you scream? There's people in the next room that could have helped you, right? But you didn't scream. I don't know, I just didn't. I don't know, I just couldn't. Or why didn't you push him off of you? And a victim would say to me something like, well, I don't know, my arms just wouldn't work. And I'd go, wait a minute, your arm looks fine to me. It's working all right. Why didn't you push him off? That's completely immobilized. And you're unable to fight. So, this is an example from a trial that I had one time. Sexual assault myths are often used as weapons against victims. So this is similar to something that happened in a trial I had one time. The defense attorney says, did you scream for help while you were having sex with Bobby? I objected to the form of the question because she wasn't having sex with Bobby. But it was overruled. She may answer that question. Rape victim, no. You didn't yell at all? No. She starts to cry. You want the jury to believe you were raped, yet you yourself didn't even call for help? Well, I just answer yes or no. No. So you can see how these cases play out in front of the jury because the defendant and his attorney are going to play out those myths, right? This is a scene from the 1980s movie with Jodie Foster called The Accused. How many of you have ever seen that? I'm not showing you anything graphic, don't worry, or horrible. But this is the prosecutor in the case trying to prepare her for what's coming. And what's coming is that they're going to use a whole lot of myths against her in the courtroom. Okay, there's a little bit of bad language here. Sorry about that.
Did you have anything to drink before you went to the mill? Or smoke anything?
Oh, half a joint, a couple beers, nothing heavy.
While you were there?
I don't know, man. I wasn't falling down drunk or anything.
How were you dressed?
What's that supposed to mean?
It means were you dressed provocatively? Showing a lot of cleavage, see-through blouse?
What the fuck difference does it matter how I was dressed? They tore it off of me.
Particularly dressed make those guys think that they can have sex with you. Did you put on a show?
What the hell are you talking about? You saw me at the hospital. When you think I asked for that? Is that what you think? That's what you think. You get the fuck out of my house.
Why didn't you tell me you found out? You.
Sorry.
I ain't got no record. You want to tell me about it?
Sorry.
All right. I was helping my girlfriend move the U-Haul, you know. We were going through Jersey, and we ran into this cop, right? And he sees we got a busted taillight, he pulls us over, he starts looking through a desk and all sorts of stuff she's got in the back, and we find a half a gram of coke. It was nothing big. It was her desk, it wasn't my desk, it was her stuff. So why is it still in the books?
I don't know, you tell me. I mean, my record was definitely,
expunged?
yeah, expunged.
Have you ever made love to more than one man?
What the fuck kind of question is that?
It's the kind of question you're going to be asked on the stand. You're also going to be asked if Larry or any other man who's ever hit you and if you liked it. You're going to be asked about your drug bust and how many drinks a day you have to smooth out the edges and how many joints. And how often you go to bars alone and whether or not you wear underwear when you go to them, and which diseases you caught, and how many abortions you've had, and I will object to all those questions. And sometimes the judge will sustain me, sometimes not. That ain't fair. Sarah, you're a witness. And it's the defense's job to show the jury that you're a rotten witness because you've got a rotten character.
I got a rotten character? You ain't gonna defend me because I'm some low-class bimbo, right?
I didn't say that.
Well, those bastards gonna do.
So that's the kind of stuff that happens in the courtrooms, is all these myths that people believe that sexual assault get exploited and used against victims. You guys are prosecutors here? I'm going to talk about the case law. I won't bore you with all of that. Okay, myth number 8. Most rapes occur in dangerous places like alleys. 60% of rapes occur in the victim's home. And 20% occur somewhere where the victim felt safe, a friend's house, for example. 80% of rapes happen in somewhere where you normally feel safe. Date rape drugs are common. Actually, date rape drugs are very rare. Alcohol is the most commonly used drug to facilitate sexual assault. And it's because if a person drinks too much alcohol, it contributes to the vulnerability of the victim. It's hard to think clearly. It's hard to gauge when the situation is getting dangerous. It's harder to fight back. This graphic shows alcohol is the #1 date rape drug. So a lot of my cases as a prosecutor over the years have started out with a woman coming in and saying, well, I went to this party last night, I was drinking with some people I didn't really know, and then it goes from there. This is the graphic. Somebody asked about perpetration rates for females and males. 1 in 4 women will experience in Utah, I'm sorry to tell you this, in Utah that's 1 in 3. We're higher than the national average. 1 in 4 women nationally will experience some sort of sexual assault. 1 in 71 men. So it's much, much higher rates for women.
What classifies as a sexual assault? What exactly?
That's a good question. Sexual assault means unwanted sexual conduct, so it could be rape, it could be sodomy, it could be grabbing someone by the pussy. Has anyone ever heard that phrase before? Those are all considered to be sexual assault.
So could you be groped at a concert and have that classify as sexual assault?
Sure.
I feel like that's the reason that there's a lot of hype against sexual assault. You know, I was sexually, some would say I was sexually assaulted. They say, well, everyone was sexually assaulted. If something is, you know, being groped at a concert, if it's such a prevalent thing, I think I don't know, just in general, I feel like it would help understanding to be able to differentiate between the types of assault and the different levels, and to have an awareness of just how dangerous this city is, or how prevalent this problem is. If we knew, you know, I do you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I do. And sex crimes are listed according to severity. For example, fondling type crimes are usually misdemeanor crimes in most states. It's a misdemeanor.
What is that in Utah? Is it a
Not as
misdemeanor?
serious. You can't go to prison. You could get maximum 1 year in jail. In Utah, 2 years probation, and be ordered to do some treatment and so forth. But a felony crime, you could go to prison. And there's 3 levels of felony, so there's 3 levels of felony sex crimes in Utah as well. Depending on if there's penetration, you know, it goes up as according what you're talking about, the seriousness, dangerous, invasiveness of the assault is much more serious.
Recently there was somebody in the news that had sex with this girl that was completely passed out next to a dumpster, and I think he got like
Rob Turner.
Yeah, Rob Turner. And what was his punishment? It was really light, since I remember.
I don't know, he got like less than 6 months.
6 months, but he actually went 3.
He actually, you almost never do the whole damage in order to do. So, yeah. So I don't know, there was a big backlash to that. It was too lenient of a sentence for that kind. That guy, to me, I'm really concerned that he's going to be a danger to women in the future. Because if you're willing to go to that kind of extreme, dragging someone behind a dumpster and sexually assaulting them, that indicates extreme antisocial behavior and predatory behavior. You're going to be a problem. He's going to be a problem. My guess is he's going to be a problem.
So I've had this conversation a lot with people who always try and tell me like the 1 in 3 or the 1 in 4 number is inaccurate. And I've also heard MRAs, men's rights activists, trying to claim that the number is 1 in 8 men. And they've given me sources for these statistics that I know weren't credible sources, but what's your recommendation for combating like the backlash? Because especially concerning the 1 in 4 number, I'm constantly getting backlash from people that are saying that that's a lie, that's not a real accurate number.
The thing that is always credible to me is the number of organizations that find the same result. If you look at almost all of the national research, now, they might be right that there's more men that don't report sexual assault. I don't know, we don't have any way of knowing really for certain how many people are assaulted and never reported. Men might be more like hesitant to report sexual assault. I would maybe agree with that. But we don't really know. Of the ones that report, these are the numbers.
Well, the only time people have like given me numbers for men that have been sexually assaulted is when they're trying to basically get you to shut up because why are we only talking about women? It's not just about women.
It's not just about women, it's almost always about women. 95% of the people that come into our system are female victims. And of that 1 in 71, the vast majority of those are men are perpetrated against in prison or jail. I had a guy that was a sex offender in Utah County Jail that was in custody. He liked young teenage boys. While he was in jail, he had 17 complaints against him for trying to sexual assault underage. So, of that number, if you're a male walking down the street in Provo, Utah, any time of day, you are not very likely to be sexually assaulted. That's the good news, okay? The males that are perpetrated on are almost always in custody and very vulnerable. Yeah.
I'm sure that there's statistics that way, and it's not me personally, it's somebody else. And what you just said about walking down the street, I mean, women are usually raped or even sexually assaulted.
Right.
Either.
Men are less likely to be raped in any sense.
I know. But it happens.
Yeah.
And it can be really bad.
I heard a police officer speak one time that was sexually assaulted on a routine police call. So yeah, it does happen, and we don't know how much out there it is that men aren't reporting.
Well, yeah,
The ones that we tend to see in our system are either they're in custody, so they're very vulnerable, or there's some serious injury, so they have to go to a hospital or something. So those are the men that we usually see that are victims. But, I mean, in my mind, you need to go with what everyone is saying, or the vast majority of the studies are saying. They're all right and all wrong.
I think that men don't want to be seen as weak, and so that's why they don't report. I mean, our society still has this idea, oh, you could have fought back, and things like that. Not every man can fight
Trauma
back.
affects men and women the same.
Yeah.
You can't always fight that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
when you're in trauma, when that's happening, sometimes like you're, like, even if something's like coming at you, sometimes you forget, oh, I can perhaps fight back. So you sometimes forget, you're like, why? Because if you trust that person,
right, absolutely. And men don't, we believe men also don't want to report domestic violence either for that same reason. They don't want to be perceived as being weak or not manly or whatever.
How do you deal with rape and marriage?
Yeah, it's really hard. I've filed those cases before. Those are very hard to prove, especially if they stay together. And I haven't handled a lot of those over the years, but they're very difficult to prove. Okay, we gotta get through the last piece. This is the most important one. Most sexual assault reports are false. There is a sheriff in Utah that walked into a meeting a couple of years ago and said, well, yeah, in our county, 100% of the rape reports are false. 100! So this is a very pervasive myth that most sexual assault reports are false. But the studies are very, very clear and very consistent. Between 2 and 8% are false reports. The FBI, who looked at 95,000 cases on a massive national study, concluded that 8% of sexual assault reports are false. You know what? That's the same rate as any other crime. There are 8% false burglary reports. There are 8% false drug reports. There are 8% false reports overall for all other crimes as well. And yet, we have in our mind that all of these victims are just making it up.
It's the same, but the same thing, that it's consistent through every type of crime statistic.
Is the data in that study publicly available? Like,
Yeah.
not just that
The
number?
FBI did a crime report, and it's kind of old, but it's the biggest one out there, so I always use it. There are other reports between 2 and 5% are false. But this is the biggest one, and this is the one that influences officers the most, because it says FBI on it. This is the biggest one I know of. 95,000 cases. They looked at them, they interviewed people, and they concluded that 8% were false reports.
Utah County had an epidemic back in the 80s of these recovered memories of satanic ritualistic abuse. When those seemed to die out, I think the residue was non-belief of real victims. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think, to me, it always, as a prosecutor, I've gotten cases before and concluded they were a false report. It's a small number, but I've concluded that they were a false report, but it makes me really angry because then if somebody makes up a report and it gets in newspapers or whatever, gets through the system, then our other victims are not believed. And that always just hurts my heart, that this kind of damage is done. But it does happen. It does happen.
Do you deal with many cases of incest?
I filed incest cases as well. But incest is normally, I know you're not going to believe this, incest is normally a misdemeanor crime. So, it's not a felony. So I only filed felony cases because I work for the Utah County Attorney's Office. City prosecutors around would be dealing with incest cases more than I would.
I hope you can't mean that incest is all the child.
I'm sorry.
I said, I hope you can't mean that incest cases involve the child.
Oh no, child sexual assault crimes are very different.
I know, yeah. When you said
This
so
is-
among people with age.
Everything that I've told you today has to do with adult victims, not child. Child sexual abuse is a whole different thing.
Not that they would have considered excessive at one point.
Yeah, no. Child sexual assault is almost always a film. A very serious film.
Do you happen to know who handled the Browns? If Ian is whose dad was.
Dave Sturgill, he was the prosecutor. I worked on that case a little bit with him. But Dave Sturgill from the county attorney's office here. Those Browns have become real vocal advocates for sexual assault victims. It's been awesome to watch that happen because they've become very active in the sexual assault response community. Okay. False reports of sexual assault almost always involve some of these elements. Mentally ill victims, rape myths, significant facts that are different than the investigation showed. So this is just my personal opinion, false reports are easily rooted out of the system. Completely false reports. Now, that's not to say false reports where somebody intentionally makes up a lie and goes in to try to get someone else in trouble. I'm not talking about cases that are hard to prove or cases that are unfounded or don't have enough evidence, okay? So, these, where someone intentionally goes in to make a false report are very rare and usually include some of these elements. I remember a case coming in to the Utah County Attorney's Office. The mother of the children who were abused said, I need to talk to a prosecutor about my own stuff. So she came in, and we didn't know it at the time, but she had mental illness. She came in and met with the prosecutor in the conference room, Dave Sturgill, same prosecutor. And he started asking her about, well, she's making up she's saying all this stuff about these dozens of men would climb into her bedroom window at night and they would shoot her with a dart in her neck to disable her. And he said, the first thing that came into my mind is, I've got to get out of this room where she's going to say that I sexually assaulted her, right? And it was sad because I think she probably really believed that stuff happened, but she was mentally ill.
I was just curious if some of the cases that are considered false reports could also include like sexual assault cases that just don't match criteria. Because I know you already said that it's not once they don't have evidence. Or, for example, I've been in a situation where I feel like I was sexually assaulted, but I know if I reported it, they would have told me, that's a lie, because it didn't, like, there was steps involved where I kind of allowed it to happen, Does that make sense? I don't know how to explain that better, but would that include those by chance? No.
So there's a larger number than 5 to 8% that are just unfounded and unprovable. But you bring up a really good point, and one that I haven't said yet, but we need to switch our culture in this country and in this state from no means no to yes means yes. We put 100% of the burden on the victim to prove that they weren't consenting. Why should we do that? We don't do that for any other category of crime. I mean, if somebody comes into your house and steals your couch, you don't have to be standing there saying, no, don't take my couch. No, I don't want you to take my couch. I'm going to block the doorway so you can't take my couch. We don't do that. We assume that you don't want your couch taken. Shouldn't we assume that people don't want things shoved inside their body unless they've said yes first? I mean, we need to switch our culture. Our entire culture needs to be switched from no means no. The victim has to prove that she said no to you have to give an affirmative. You have to hear an affirmative yes before you proceed. I had a case in Utah County where the woman was at a party. She went into the bedroom. She was feeling sick. She laid down on bed. She was vomiting over the edge of the bed. A man came into the room and started having sex with her from behind and said, well, she didn't say no. She's vomiting, but she didn't say no. And the judge threw the case out at halftime. It didn't have to go to a jury. The jury didn't get to decide that it was right. Because she hadn't said no. We need to change that. The only acceptable answer is yes means yes. But we're a long way away from that still.
Any chance that the judiciary can get the kind of training that you've done with the police?
Love to do that. They actually invited me to the District Court Judges Conference this summer to talk about domestic violence. Woohoo! So, yes. So my next step is I want to talk to them about sexual assault.
Sorry, you said you've been doing this since the 90s, and how things have changed. And I feel like when I was younger, I was about 5 and I was my babysitter, so she would often be and his older brother. There were 2 other kids that were put on by the little brother. I dealt with it. And I tried to tell her and she wouldn't believe me. She was deeply religious and like her religion, I don't know if she's in Pakistan, but I would try to tell her and she'd like try to shut me off and everything. No, my son didn't do that. And we took it to court and they threw it out because they're like, how is there any proof? How can we prove that this didn't happen? And I felt like if that case had happened now, that there would have been much different results.
Well, thank you. I hope you're right. I mean, I think that we have made a lot of progress.
I feel like there could have been at least more, there wasn't enough, there wasn't enough trial. I felt like it was just like this one day I got sent and like, all right, well, can you prove that it happened? I'm like, well, just because I'm 5 and
have, yes. Okay, I gotta stop talking, I'm getting the death signal from Lance. So, I want to end with something positive, because you've heard a lot of sad, negative stuff. So I want to end with something. What can we do? What is it that we can do to help victims and support them? The first thing is, if somebody comes to you and says they were raped, especially if they say they were raped last night or yesterday or within the last few days, you need to talk to them about their options. Because there is a certain amount of evidence that can be lost if you just tell them to go home and crawl under the covers and think about it for the next 10 days. So you need to discuss with them what their options are. It's still their choice. But I really feel like we need to talk to victims about, if you don't get, it's up to you whether you want a medical exam or not, or you want to report to the police or not. But if you don't do a medical exam, you can't change your mind later. That evidence will be gone forever. So I feel like we need to at least talk with victims about what their options are, help them find some resources. Most people that are sexually assaulted have no idea where to go for help or what to do. And, we can say things like, I'm going to help you find some resources. I'm sorry this happened to you. What do you need? We don't need to take over victims' lives and do things for them, but we need to ask them, what do you need? What will help you? What will make you feel safe? And how can I help do that? I've been to trial a lot of times with young children, and I started learning one thing about helping them be able to walk up there and sit there and testify, and that was I started asking them, what do you need that would help you feel safe? It's amazing the things they'll say if you just ask them, right? Let's not assume that every victim needs the same thing. Let's ask them, what do you need? What would help you? I want to talk to you about some of the options that you have. Here's what you can do. But, what can I do that would be helpful to you? Because I remember this one little girl one time saying that she didn't know if she could do it without somebody with her. So she said, can I please have someone to go with me? And so I thought, I don't know, but I'll ask the judge. So we went in and asked the judge, could somebody go into the court with her that isn't a witness? And the judge said, sure. So she walked up there with her aunt, sat on her aunt's lap the whole time and told the whole story. But if I had just assumed what would be good for her, it might have been totally wrong. So we need to be always willing to ask victims, what do you need? What can I do to help you? Instead of the first questions out of our mouth are, well, why did you go over to that party? I told you not to go there. Or, what were you wearing? Oh, things like that are said all the time. Or, he's a really nice guy, I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. Those kind of things that maybe even well-intentioned on our part can be really harmful to victims. There's a national organization that's awesome called Start by Believing. The last one, take a stand against sexual assault. Let yourself be known as somebody that people could come to. Be once in a while on Facebook, post something against sexual assault. Once in a while, join some groups. There's a national group called Start by Believing. And it also is happening here in Utah. There is a Start by Believing Facebook group. You can go just follow them and see what they're doing and support some of the things. I know that in Utah 2 legislatures ago, Utah became the second state in the United States to pass a Start by Believing resolution. We start by believing victims when they come to us. It doesn't say end by believing, by the way, but it says start by believing them so that you can get them help. Because if you start by thinking they're lying, they're never going to get help. They're never going to go for a medical exam. What you do can make a difference in someone's life. I know this for sure because I've sat and talked with victims about what made a difference for them. And you can make a difference in somebody's life by the way you respond when they say, I was raped last night, I don't know what to do. Response makes such a huge difference. Let me just tell you about one story before I forget. Let me do questions. Lance, I'm sorry. Just one little story, it's short, but it really, I've always remembered it. 20 years ago, I was in Oregon, I was a prosecutor, I was getting ready to go to trial on a rape case. And the victim came into my office and he sat on the couch and he said, "Oh, I was talking about the case and her testimony and that sort of thing." And at one point in the interview, I said to her, "Has anything like this happened to you before?" And she said, "Oh yeah. 20 years ago, when I was a teenager, I was raped." And I said, "Well, tell me about that." She did not tell me, did it go to trial, did she testify, did it convicted? She didn't tell me any of that. Here's what she said. "Oh, let me tell you about my detective. He's awesome. He really helped me. He believed me, he supported me, he did a great job on my case." And then she took her purse out and she took her wallet out of her purse. In her wallet was the card of the detective that worked on her case 20 years ago. She carried his card in her wallet for 20 years. On the back of the card, he had written, "You can do it." And she said, "I get that card all the time and I just look at it. When I'm feeling like really down, or I get discouraged about something, or I start thinking about what happened, I take that card out and I look at it." Don't we want to do that in somebody's life? That detective, and believe me, I know many of the detectives that weren't that compassionate, but that detective made a difference in the rest of her life. From that moment on, he helped her heal. He helped her go on to have a happy, successful life. You can be that person for someone. In your response, how you respond to their statement about sexual assault or domestic violence or any sort of event that's traumatizing you. You can respond with compassion and caring instead of. Okay, questions? Yes.
So I don't know if you even changed our honor code recently in light of a bunch of criticism of the whole.
Like 150,000 signatures on a petition?
Yes, exactly. Do you think that's actually going to change anything? Because I think a lot of the changes they made, like recently they also changed the honor code, so if you left
they don't have sexual assault at BYU.
If you left the faith, there's actual like a loophole that allows you to still stay a student if you leave Mormonism. Supposedly, like that's a reason you can petition to not be kicked out now. Before it wasn't. So this whole like change of the honor code, do you think that's actually going to change stuff? Or is that more like lip service to appease the criticisms?
That remains to be seen. I don't know. I'm hopeful. And there's another little thing called civil lawsuits that need to start happening for institutions that are damaging victims. So that's the motivation too. Also being, unaccredited as a university, like now that it's become so public, might be some motivation. I'm very hopeful. I mean, I think we need to give people the opportunity to do the right thing. We need to give people the opportunity to change. And I hope they do. I really hope they do. I hope it's not just window dressing. Because I know for a fact that victims have gone to the BYU police or the honor code and been told not to report their sexual assault. I know for a fact that happens because I've heard it. So I think the publicness of that, that one victim that made it so public was named Utah Person of the Year by the Tribune. Because she brought this whole thing to light that was happening. It was so damaging. So I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful that things are. There were some good people on Julie Valentine, one of the people I work with primarily, was on that committee and made some good recommendations. Whether they'll do it, I don't know. It's up to them, I guess.
My question, I think, is about prevention or education from the youth up. Because I feel that a lot of this has to do with people not being okay with sexuality at all. And the conversations that take place from a youth to an adolescent to a teenager to a young adult. Like, I mean, within the religious culture here, it's something that just is never talked about. And so when young people are getting together, whether they're drunk or not, or yes is yes and no is no, that's never really talked about beforehand. So what are some of the things I'm trying to think of, like how we can help with that education to be able to stop it from happening altogether?
Yeah. We need to invest more as a society into prevention. We need to invest more into education and awareness. We need to start at the elementary school. If somebody's on the ground and you're tickling them and they don't want it, you need to stop. Things like that. We need to start young. We need to not force young children to, hug and kiss and sit on people's laps if they don't want to. I mean, we need to start younger. That you have a right to say what happens to your body. So we need, as a society, we need to invest. See, I'm a response person, so I mostly work on response to sexual assault. But there's a lot of good work being done on prevention as well. Yes means yes is a big thing. Another campaign that I saw recently, it was not in Utah, it was in another state, was Can I Kiss You? I really liked that because, well, hey, why don't we ask before we do something to someone, even something as small as kissing? Can I kiss you? Then they were pushing this at the high school level. So, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff happening with prevention as well, but, we still have a lot of work to do.
Along those lines, there are some children's books that you can get to help prevent child sexual abuse, like My Body Belongs to Me. That's a good one, teaching kids boundaries and the right touch. So those are some things that you can read to your parents. Start out.
My Body Belongs to Me. I love that. Wouldn't that be nice if all of our
I think something that we don't think about as society is how it can start so small, just pressuring little kids into hugging people that they don't want to hug. For example, I've noticed that. I pay attention to my nephews when my grandparents say go hug your aunt, they force them to, and I'm like, no, don't hug me if you don't want to. Even little things like that, we should be teaching from the time they're 2 years old. It's you don't have to touch people if you don't want to. You don't
or how about the uncle saying, can I give you a hug?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. We have a lot of work to do in this society. I'm hopeful because I think there's a lot of good discussion starting.
Okay, so question, and it might be difficult to answer, but so say you have a friend or family who doesn't invite you to some significant sexual assault. And you know, I don't want to go to police, I don't want to go to, I just think I should go with this, I mean, then you feel like you're victimized, or, you need help, at what point, is it appropriate? And I guess I've kind of gone from thinking, well, whatever they want to, this is a justice issue, this is an issue that really needs to be, dealt with, so I might be more inclined now to say, no, I'm sorry, but I'm
There's nothing wrong with saying, in my opinion, you should report this.
I mean, you want to honor and support that person, but I mean, some people get traumatized by it, and then, like I said, that most of them aren't reporting it, and they just go, just eats away at them, and then this person's out there perpetrating.
The thing about, though, going forward in the criminal justice system, it's a very subjective response that you have. Some victims that I have worked with were actually benefited by going through the system. Yeah. It's not always like, this is going to...
I mean, they don't know, and they're afraid. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just victimized, and so now it's like, oh, I don't want more complication and, stress.
But the thing is, let them know, look, I'm going to be here. I'll go with you to the police station. I will be here for you. I'll help you if you're interested in doing this. Because a lot of people think it's going to be like, the old Dragnet movies where you put in a room with a great metal table and a spotlight over your head. I mean, they had that image in their head that that's what it's going to be. And it's not like that. I mean, we have made some progress in the criminal justice system. But just keep reassuring them, look, I feel like this is really important. I would like to see you reported. I would like to see you go to the hospital. I'll go with you. You're not going to be alone. You're not going to be... And you can say things like that as well.
2 more questions.
This is as a follow to that, would it be appropriate to say, give us a space and say, you know what, we have to do it right now, could it be a day later, a week later?
Sure.
Give-
There is not going to be a nurse in the history of the universe that's going to hold a victim down and, try to put things out of their body. That's not going to happen.
And then is
So
there a
they
time
have
where
to
it
be
becomes,
ready. They have to be willing to do these things.
and as time goes by, does it get more difficult to gather the evidence or prosecute?
Although, the more technology advances, I reviewed a case the other day that a woman had been sexually assaulted 10 days earlier. She had showered and bathed several times. 10 days later, she went in for an exam. They found DNA on her cervix. I was shocked. So the technology is getting more and more advanced. So we can get it. Now they're recommending within 5 days, but they may soon change that to longer. So technology is getting better and better, but the general rule is the longer you wait, the less.
So what's the statute of limitations?
There is no statute of limitations in Utah anymore for all first-degree felony sex crimes, the most serious sex crimes. Second-degree felonies and third-degree felonies and misdemeanors, there are statute of limitations still, but for rape, sodomy, aggravated sexual assault, most serious attempted murder, the most serious, all first-degree felonies basically that involve sex crimes, there's no statute of limitations. But whether or not you can prove it is a different issue. So a woman comes into my office and says 20 years ago I was raped, I can file that case. But it's harder and harder to prove as time goes on.
One more question?
What about someone where the perpetrator is dead already? Is there any point would it be helpful for the victim to turn around and file a case even though the perpetrator is already dead?
I would kind of recommend that they go to a therapist first to see if they're ready to do that, whether it's a cost benefit. With the criminal justice system, it's kind of a cost benefit analysis. I don't know. I don't know whether that would be good or not, but I would recommend that that person start with a therapist first. And then make it, because there's no time running, right? I mean, you can't be more dead. You're just dead, right? So.
I was going to say, I work in the school district. Utah spends money on after-school activities, after-school throw money away on teaching kids something that is not work. So if you want to do something, contact administrators, write letters, call them, because
Okay, I'm going to give you a name, Angela Romero. Angela Romero has been a champion for legislation and policy in Utah for sexual assault. She's the one that got whatever exists right now in place, but it needs to be improved. And she, is willing to do it. She's willing to fight the fight, but
Is she in District 26?
it's somewhere western part of Salt Lake City. She ran unopposed this time, though. So, we have very good champions for this kind of stuff at the legislature, but luckily there aren't. Say that again.
You can also contact me with
I know that, there's going to be more people One of the big problems in the legislature is
would love to keep this going. I would love to keep this going. But let's get Donna Kelly around the block.